time is 10 past 10. Well, at this point, through the conference, I believe that there is no need for an introduction for certain people. You had the opportunity to listen to KARIN Morrison on a Wednesday. She's Australian by birth. She's been director of the Development Centre at the leading independent school of Victoria, where she has led many different projects. She has worked for the Feuerstens Institute as well in areas related to neuroscience. She's also collaborated with Harvard University on Project Zero and met Professor Perkins at the ICAD in Singapore and was courageous enough to present a suggestion to go for the Melbourne ICAD in 2005. She's been collaborating with the organizers in the local ICAD here in Bilbao. And after that short introduction, I'll leave you with KARIN Morrison with a presentation entitled Leading Learning That Matters.
Can you believe it? The conference is finishing today. What a week it's been. So much to share and learn and listen to, and new friends and new mentors, so many things happening. This morning I want to talk with you about a very new project. Well, it's in its third year, but it's the first time this project has run. And it's called Leading Learning That Matters, and it's for a very specific group of people. So let's just, before I get on to what the project's about, let's just think about for a minute, learning that matters. Doesn't all learning matter? When I was thinking about it, I think, well, yeah, even the stuff we don't really want to remember, sometimes it helps us a lot. So yeah, learning matters, but some matters more than others. I wonder what is that? And certainly with the people that we've been hearing this week, we've been hearing a lot of different points to help indicate what those things can be, and we have our own ideas about that too. But certainly we've seen things that really interest us matter, things that we're passionate about, things that we have a need for, and I'm sure you've got a lot of other thoughts about that too. And matters to whom? If you're an educator, and I'd imagine most people here are educators, but the same things apply to all sorts of organisations, who does it matter to? Does it matter to you if you're the boss? Does it matter to you if you're the person who makes sure every night that the rooms are locked and everything's clean and things like that? Does it matter to the people, your colleagues, your students, fellow workers? Well, things matter to everybody. Lots of things matter to everybody, but some things matter more to other people than others. If it's specifically related to the work you do, if it's specifically related to a goal you're setting, there's so many different things. But when we're teaching in schools, we have such big curriculums. We have so many different laws telling us what we should do, what we're meant to do. But what matters to our students? Do the same things continue to matter? I mean, we have to think about our students. The world that our students go into is going to be very different to the world we went into when we left school. And how do we know what it's going to be? The jobs they'll go into probably haven't even been created yet. Do we still teach the same things that we were taught, that our parents were taught? When do we know when to let go and be open to new ideas? If things worked before, why won't they keep working? And when an organisation or when your school is doing really well, why rock the boat? Why make changes when what you've been doing for a long time brings you to a very good place? But if you keep thinking like this, will your school be still so well placed in years to come? And I remember hearing De Bono a long time ago talking about the companies he works with. And one of them was an oil company, and I better not say a name because I'll probably say the wrong one. But he was saying, and this oil company was at the top of the game. If you had a graph comparing all the different oil companies, the one he was working with was way up here. And he was surprised that they came and asked him to work with him again. And he was thinking about that. But he had very good ideas about it, but he talked to them about it. And what came out in their discussions was, yeah, we are at the top, but do you know what? We want to stay at the top. We want to make sure that we keep maintaining where we are and build on our learning according to the needs of our customers, according to what's happening in the community. And that's very much like schools too. If we want to stay doing well, we can't just sit where we are. Just because what worked for us before doesn't mean it will continue to work for us. So what do we do? And where does leadership come into this? What decisions do the leaders make that can really change what's going to happen? Now, talking about doing things what we've always done. We've always done, well, with lots of things we've always done what our mum told us or our teacher told us or what was really good for us before, whether it's something trivial like the colours you wear or something important like the way you learn to solve a mathematical problem. But hey, when you learn ways that make it more efficient, well, that's good too. And why go the long way around if you can take a really good shortcut? But it's not easy to let go of those things. And something very interesting that I learned about when I was a part of a think tank in Harvard, we were talking about this think tank, LILA, Learning Innovations Laboratory, talking about unlearning. What a strange word that is, unlearning. How can you unlearn something that's part of you? Well, it's not just forgetting because it's still there, but can you actually let go of it? Aren't we glad that doctors let go of some of the things that they used to do to treat people's illnesses? Some things we're really glad they let go of. And that's with everything, with safety measures, with all sorts, even with a good recipe. Maybe Mum taught it to me, but I've learnt since that, hey, if you just add an extra egg or you do this, or it can even be better. It's not saying that what we learned or was learned before is wrong or bad. It was really good at the time. But sometimes you have to let go. And unlearning is actually discarding it. Not saying it was bad news. Yeah, it worked really well then. But that's history now. That's in the past. But what now? What now can I learn instead? Make room for it. What is worth learning now to maximise the opportunities for today's and tomorrow, and how can this be achieved? These are really big questions, and there aren't instant answers for any of it, but things to think about it. So I want to tell you a little bit about the story of leading learning that matters. When I first came to Independent Schools Victoria, an organisation in Australia that provides wonderful services for over 200 schools across the state of Victoria, I was asked to have a look at what things were being offered, if I saw needs for new things or different possibilities. And, they were doing such great things. It wasn't though there was a need for new things, but there's always room to grow and look at different things. And I was thinking about, what about the roles of principals or directors of schools? I know there are different names in different countries for the leaders of a school, but the person up top who's making decisions about the school and handling it through all the good times as well as the challenging times. So if I'm using the word principal or director, we'll see them as interchangeable. So I was thinking about, what about the really experienced principals? Principals have been in their role for 7 or 10 years. They've been there a while, perhaps some of them a lot longer. It's a really hard job. Those of you who are in leadership positions know very well that being a leader is not easy. It's wonderful that you're the person that can make decisions about bringing things to fruition, your dreams and ideas, but it's not so easy as it sounds, as we all know when we have plans and goals. But principals who have been in their role for a long time, they can be exhausted managing the chaos that happens, managing the really difficult times, staff issues, changes in government, or a whole new group of students coming from different countries with different languages. And they can all be managed and managed really well, but you have to constantly be on your toes to another change in curriculum, another change what the government wants, what the community's asking for. But what about their passion for learning? Why they came into education in the first place? The dreams that educators have of making a difference to the lives of children, bringing change in the world for future leaders. And that's still there, but sometimes, another staffing problem, another teacher resigning suddenly without much notice and finding it can be really hard keeping the momentum going and keeping the positive attitude. So I was thinking, what can we do to really bring back that passion for education, that passion for learning? Not that it's not still there, it is, but see them as learners themselves, not just about government things, but as learners of things they're interested in, of things they want to do. How can we take them further in that and also give them an opportunity to explore leadership from many different ways? And so that was the idea behind this project. I've been so fortunate and privileged to have been working with Project Zero on different things over a number of years, and I went to speak to Professor David Perkins, who you just saw on the stage, and Dr. Daniel Wilson, who's now the director of Project Zero, and asked them would they be interested in collaborating on this project. And they were so kind to agree. I so appreciate that. And we've been working together on that project now into the 3rd year. And Flossie Chua has also joined the team, and we work very much as a team and share our ideas and learning and all their wonderful skills and experience and knowledge to share with this group of principals in Australia. So that was the idea. I won't go through all of these now, but I'll keep referring back to them as we go through the session. The goals of the project, well, certainly the things that I've been talking about now, to really give the opportunities and experiences for principals to learn about different ways of looking at what matters to learn today, what learning matters for our students in this changing world, and how can we use it in ways that doesn't compromise the curriculum or the things that we need to be doing in lots of ways, but still goes further and deeper. And that's why I chose the background for this slide. That's sort of like a wave on top, that we're going deep, deep into the ocean, exploring more, but can always come up for air too. Another goal that was very important to me, having worked in schools for most of my life, is that when you're working in a collaborative community, it's so much better when there's trust, when you can bounce ideas off the teacher in the next room, at staff meetings and things like that, and don't feel embarrassed and think, oh, no, is that a dumb question, or am I showing what I don't know? But it's okay to admit that you've got a lot of questions, and you're not going to be made fun of, you're going to be listened to, and someone else will say, hey, do you know what I did when I was in that position, and share ideas. So a community of collegiality was something that was very important, and right from the beginning that was something we were looking at. And the planning started right back then, thinking about how can we help looking at the role of leadership in learning that matters in a school, in a classroom, in an organisation, a school with campuses spread out. One of our principals has campuses in different states in Australia and even some overseas, the same school. Most are not like that. Some are very, very small. Some are city schools, some are country schools. There's a big variety of them. We also asked a commitment from the principals that they would, if they wanted to join this project, would they make a commitment to stay for 3 years? I think I once heard Adonai quite many years ago, Michael Fullan saying, a change easily implemented is easily discarded. And that's often how it is. It's a new flavour of the month, let's do it. Looks great, okay, we'll do it. And then next month someone else is talking about something else and on it comes. But how can you internalise things when there's so much change and you can't really go in deeper, explore further and really think about it some more? So surprisingly, a group of principals did make this commitment, and it would mean they would be leaving their schools a bit too. We planned, even though they were spread far apart, Australia's a big country and Victoria's a big state in that country, that we planned to get together 4 times a year as a whole group. Some of those were residentials, 2 days at a time, staying overnight so they wasn't rushing back to school in between and could really focus, be in the present, really thinking of mindfulness, being there then. And also 2 study tours, one in the first year of the project and one in the third year of the project. And they were designed to look at leadership in different contexts. Not schools. We know looking at other schools is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And principals and leaders can organise that themselves. And as an organisation, we can support them doing that. But we wanted to see what it looks like to lead an organisation that's very different to yours. How could it be? What sort of things? And people made that commitment and they did it. So I'll just move on and come back to that. So the role of leaders there, and I'll just go over the highlighted part, don't need to read all that print now, but leaders begin the process. As a leader, you're the one that says, we're going to be trying this, and how you say it, not to put it on top of people, but to make it invitational and accessible, that people won't say, oh no, here he goes again. Another part is developing the people capacity, the capacity of people in your school that they can take on roles too. You're not standing on an island by yourself, having people around you to support you, to follow through with the work. And also creating a culture of open conversations that support thoughtful transformations congruent with what's already happening in the school. So it's not saying, oh, here we go again, but building on what's already there. There are always good things happening in schools. And then it's really interesting that in research, and Daniel Wilson, Janice Ortega wrote a white paper, and so did David Perkins and Flossie Chua of different things. And some of the things they talked about was that the research is showing that the quality of leadership explains the astounding 27% of the variation of performance, second only to teacher and to classroom practices. Now that's a huge amount, isn't it? Almost a third from the way the leader manages the school, leads the school. Leadership indeed matters, no question about that. And in addition to exploring leadership in schools at large, another aim of the project was to identify the qualities of leadership that specifically support learning that matters in the schools that we were working with, getting to know the principals and what would really work for them, and really looking at expanding the universe of what leaders encounter and what questions come up all the time. So just as to remind me that I keep back on this and keep focusing on things that we're saying. So the first residential we had was in country Victoria, a really lovely spot where principals got together, and one of the very early things that we talked about were the dreams. What are the dreams you have for your school, for your classroom? What are the dreams you have? Perhaps for a moment, I'll stop talking and I'd like you to talk. I'll think about first, then talk to the person near you about dreams you have for your school. What sort of dreams do you have? What are you thinking about for your school? Okay, if we press pause for a moment, anybody like to share their dream? I'm going to do something. I do crazy things sometimes. I'm going to do something. Maybe I'm going to throw something and if you catch it, maybe you can share your dream. I'm not a very good throw.
Just this one, please.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I want to make sure that you can hear. And you can keep that too. Would you like to tell us about your dream? Would you like to come up? Oh, thanks, Angela. That would be great. And there's no judgment, this post.
A ver, nosotras...
We were talking about how important it is that leaders at school, not so much the principal or the headmaster, yes, we were talking about how important it is for leaders, and not just the headmaster or the principal. I'm talking about leaders at an intermediate level, perhaps. Get empowered.
se empoderen en su...
Get empowered themselves in their mission as leaders.
As leaders.
Y ese sería un poco el sueño en...
And that would be our dream at this moment for my school.
Dream at this moment for our school. Thank you very much. We'll thank you for the help with technology too and the translation. Thank you very much. And we all have different dreams for our schools, whether we articulate them or not, or for our classrooms, for our children, we have dreams for them. And at this stage, the very first time this group of principals got together, they either sat by themselves for a little bit outside or in the room we were meeting, or with a partner, just someone that they grouped with, and just wrote about their dreams. What were their dreams for their school? And really thinking about what do we really want to do? And the quote that I found that sort of echoed with me was, dreams are today's answers to tomorrow's questions. If we have a dream, we think about it now, well, we've got lots of questions, but can we really think we'll find an answer for them? And then what I did, and David and Daniel were there with us all together this first meeting together, and we were thinking all the time, how are we moving forward with this? Even though we had plans, we wanted to be building it together with the principals. They're the ones, you're the ones in the schools working with children every day. And so we took it as some of the key points. Is it possible to create a tool to know what learning matters or doesn't matter in your own school? What would rich educational outcomes be? What would it look like to develop leadership particularly well suited to develop these outcomes, and thinking about that. And then the principals went further with their dreams. Then later on, we asked them to think about, well, what are the mysteries? What are the questions that come out of your dreams? Things that you want to explore further. How can I, what might I do? What, and really thinking about it. So that was one of the structures that we used, starting with dreams and mysteries and actions and collecting evidence, all the different steps. And we were thinking about reimagining education. From the beginning, well, you don't have to read that, there you can see. We started talking about beyonding. And he talked about Edward de Bono, very good with words. Well, Dave Perkins certainly is too, and he came up the word with beyonding. We're going beyonding curriculum, beyonding what's expected, beyond, and I'll come to more of that in a moment. And there it tells you what some of those beyondings are. 6 beyondings we came up with. Beyond local, embracing global perspectives, problems and studies. So not just things that are happening in your town that are the talk about at the moment because that's there, but what if we look at wider in the world? What's happening with things? In Australia we have problems with water. We're such a dry, hot country. Is there plentiful water everywhere? How do people manage to have sustainable environments if they've got water shortages? What other environmental problems could there be? Also, how do people manage in different cultures with the challenges they may have? And what things can we learn from each other? And so much more. Another beyond topics, transforming topics into tools of broad understanding. So rather than look at one very isolated something, look at it deeper, look at it further. What else can you do? What else can you find? Beyond traditional disciplines, renewing and extending the disciplines. I could spend a lot of time on each one, but I know we've got limited time, so today I'm giving you a taste of the things in this project, and I'm happy to speak with any of you over morning tea or lunch or any time. But Carlina Rinaldi from Reggio Emilia has a saying that she once said, I hope the bite of the apple I give you gives you the taste of the whole apple. And I hope the bite of Leading Learning That Matters that I'm offering you this morning gives you the taste of the whole project. But I know it's only a taste, and I know there'll be puzzles. I understand that. What about going beyond discrete disciplines? When I was at school, history was one lesson, geography was another lesson, maths was another lesson, but they could have all been joined together so well, and that would have made much more sense to me if instead of showing me graphs about temperatures and things like this, when we were talking about numbers in maths, if it was used to talk about the differences in the countries that I was looking at, we were studying it in geography, in the temperatures, and that affected the sort of vegetation and the sort of food that people were eating there and all sorts of things. And just by connecting, I'm just talking off the top of my head things here, just way of connecting. The history of the place, is that really why that the way that the people are building their houses here because of the limited resources they had then or their religious or cultural traditions? And it really helps you remember instead of being asked to remember a fact. If you can go across disciplines, interdisciplinary learning makes things so much richer and makes so much more sense. Instead of telling your child, no, you have to do this, you have to do that. Do you know if you do that, that will really help you be able to get to where you want to go with all those plans and dreams you had. But some of those steps. And I remember at school, I had some students who were great with computers, but didn't pay much, and before there was a lot of the things that are available now, but didn't have much interest in some of the other subjects. But when I took them one day on an outing to a field trip, an excursion, to meet with some people in different fields and how they used computers to get where they wanted to go, to check up information, to see images of things and all sorts, it gave them a different understanding that, yeah, they can use their computer as a tool, not just being really cluey on a computer and knowing how to save and how to print and make animations and all this, but how they can find out more about the things they're really interested in. And so many different ways. Beyond academic engagement, fostering personal significance, commitment and passion. And that's certainly come up in sessions we've had before during the week. If you're passionate about something, if it's important to you to know, it's important for you to understand so you can do it really, really well. It can be really important too about why there are rules. If you tell students, no, you cannot go there at lunchtime, you cannot do this that day, but if you explain to them why, and there's a reason, hey, I know you've got your mum's on the other side of the road and you want to see her, but do you know what can happen if you just see your mum and run to go and get her? Have you thought about, look after your own safety first. If your mum can see you and you wave to her, she'll come over to you, or you can wait, but don't just run first. And it's in every way, it's so many different ways. If you think about, well, there's a reason why there's a rule there. There's a reason why we're not allowed to have our computers on or our phones on all the time in class, even though they can be really helpful and we have opportunities for that, but sometimes not good because we're missing out listening to what someone else is saying, and what they're saying makes sense to me, much more sometimes than what I might see on the computer with big words I don't understand. So trying to give reasons why, the consequences and things, and helping students take ownership in their own learning, that it's about for them that it's important. And moving beyond today, looking further, 21st century, and hey, even further. Some of our students today will be going even further than the 21st century. And what can we look at? Still taking notice of what's happened in the past and what's happening in the world now, but how can we move forward? How can we go forward? Now, this is something, it's funny, I'm sure that you'll all think that when, I'll just go back for a second, when you're paying attention to one particular thing, say you're buying a new car, and say you decide, oh, I'm going to buy a Toyota, and all of a sudden you notice the Toyota's on the road, or a Citroen, or whatever one you're thinking of, all of a sudden you notice that. If you follow a particular football team and you see someone wearing the jumper that has that on it, you notice it straight away. It's really interesting what you notice when you're sensitive to something. Pregnant women, notice pregnant women everywhere. All of a sudden it's something of interest. Teenagers who are looking for a particular fashion and really think it's really cool to wear jeans that have got a hole around the knee and something near the ankle, or a tattoo on the ankle or something like that. Well, okay, quite a few people have got it and they look really cool. Maybe that's for me. We have an extra sensitivity, a heightened awareness of things that connect to what we're doing, and so do students too. And if we can help them make those connections. But I'm saying it maybe to excuse the crazy things I do, the connections I make to things. I make lots of different connections to things. And once I was flipping over newspapers and I came across the business section, which is not what I usually read, but I find we learn a lot from business, and that's what I value about these thinking conferences. We learn from other disciplines. And I saw something about management guru Peter Drucker coined the phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast. That had my attention. It's one of those great one-liners that captures a whole thesis in a few words. He was telling us that even the most carefully crafted business plan could fail if its objectives were not aligned to the values, beliefs and behaviours of those trusted with its execution. And I was thinking straight away, now, principals, leaders, teachers are leaders too of their classrooms. So many different types of leaders. You can have the best plans, but if you're in the classroom and you're doing something that goes against the philosophy of the school, it can be really tricky. If your ideas haven't been shared with leadership, sometimes they need to be first, not always, lots of times it goes by trust. If the principal, if the leader's got a really good plan developed, but he hasn't spoken to the people in the community that needs to support him, fall apart. So it's just interesting how when you see something, it just straight away you think, I can see that makes sense. And certainly the culture within we work is a very big factor. And you would have heard in the Visible Thinking panel, some of you may have heard in the Visible Thinking panel the other day talking about the cultural forces, and with Ron Richard's session also this week in his new book about cultural forces, they talk about all these things, and interaction and relationships is a big one, how the people around you are relating to you and you to them to get ideas forward. So some questions to think about. I'll just let you have a look at them. I'd like you to start with one that triggers most to you, but let's have a few minutes to think about it and talk about it with people beside you, and then we'll share some ideas about them. Probably the lady who was down there might.
Yes, I don't know.
I'll ask them.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, who's been thinking about the first question? How am I or others creating the goals and directions of learning in my school? Angela, would you like to throw it to someone throw something to someone who wants to share? And we've got a microphone, so we want everyone to be able to hear.
I prefer not to speak, but
It's okay.
okay. About the third question,
The first question,
the first.
yeah.
Okay, we've been talking about. Well, first of all, I think we have to get people involved, and also you have to respect ideas and create a landscape with fear and anxiety. Is it right?
Yes.
It's not allowed, you know. I think we cannot create goals for learning and direction if we do not before create the atmosphere to work with that. I think it's the first step.
Right,
Just-
yeah. Building
and-
that trust
and
is
it-
so important, isn't it? Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Thank you for sharing it. And it's frustrating to be in a climate like that, isn't it? That feeling of fear. And,
Yeah, it's not good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else like to share on that question? Okay, let's maybe move on to the second. And you don't have to share. I know it's not enough time to really process it too. It's where we're trying to go on speed dial, I think. How am I or others supporting the learning of the staff and students? If you just want to put your hand up, Angela will bring the microphone to you.
Okay, so what it made me immediately recognise was, as a teacher, the value of doing this at the start of the year and allowing so many of our teachers within the school to recognise their position of leadership and recognising it's a distributed leadership. It isn't just the people sitting in the admin offices. It's actually everybody has a responsibility to act as a leader in their team because they're coming with some knowledge that the other people in the team don't have. So I think it's a very empowering question. I thought it was really valuable.
Thank you very much. And I think it's so true that everyone is a leader in different ways, and how people are leading in their classrooms, leading in different ways and empowering others counts for a lot. Thank you very much, Lisa. The third question, how am I or others creating a culture of collaboration in my school? Now, it doesn't always happen, but hopefully it is, and hopefully more and more. Would someone like to just put up their hand? Angela will bring a microphone to you. If you can, thank you. And there's someone in the front who will ask you next. Thank you. Thanks.
No hablo inglés igual de bien.
Well, on that question, on how we can foster a culture of collaboration at work, I think the main thing is that we are aware of the fact that the most important thing is to trust others. Trust others, and above all, raise their energy or make them be aware of their energy, because their opinion counts. Everyone has a lot to contribute with. If we trust each other, if we give them both the possibility to share their views, we can enrich.
Trust each other and give them the opportunity to share their opinion.
Sí,
Yes, it is difficult for a headmaster to believe. Well, I've seen this in different presentations. We've talked about fear.
Believe in different presentations there's been talk about fear.
Yes, headmasters do not have the truth by themselves or to themselves only. If we trust each other and we forget about fear, we'll give others the possibility to enrich each other, therefore going into a culture where everyone contributes to that improvement.
Thank you. The headmaster doesn't know everything. He doesn't know everything. But if we trust each other and we go in together, we can really move towards the future together. I'm sorry, the last part could just... yeah? Oh, sorry. I was given this because the thought that maybe someone hasn't got... I beg your pardon. Thank you for clarifying that for me. Thanks a lot. Beautiful. It means you're getting much more accurate because I'm processing it as I'm saying it. Thank you very much. Helen, would you like to share your thoughts? Just up the front here, there's a lady.
The school I'm working with on my doctoral studies, we've done a lot of work around relational trust and establishing professional learning communities. And a part of that process is looking at collective efficacy and going from the self to the we and then to the collective. So it's not only about what can I do to shift a school, but what can we all do, and bringing in all stakeholders and having that shared voice and opinion. But most importantly, it's about protecting the time to have those conversations and honouring that time. So that time isn't eaten into by anything else. It is honoured for that professional conversation, and it is seen as a professional conversation and not just as a nice meeting fest, if you like.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Is one more person here?
I wanted to add something. Now, in our school, we are going through this stage, precisely. We are now changing certain things. We have a very traditional, very academic-oriented school with excellent results, I have to say, but we have realized a number of things. Little by little, there is a bigger gap between our work and our children. And, for example, on responding to the last question on the slide, during the last academic season, we have set up a committee of teachers. Obviously, we have experts in different fields. We have the teacher in the area of design or in language or in mathematics, and then some tutors. And all of them are working together to bring about changes. They're giving us ideas from their point of view, from their own field. And by adding up all those ideas, we have gathered excitement. We are so excited to launch all the actions that have been proposed. And the most important thing of all is that the people at the top have decided to push for this. At least with some of the ideas. They've decided to push for some of the ideas generated in the committee. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you very much. It does sound exciting. And you have ownership of what's moving ahead. And I think that's so important. When there's shared ownership of new ideas, new changes, new plans, ideas that are coming into action into the schools, when you have ownership of it, makes such a difference, doesn't it? Ownership and support and open and trusting communication. Thank you. Here is another time further on in the project when the principals were meeting together and looking at the circles of influence, that you can have the most wonderful ideas and plans, but there are so many people that you have to take into consideration. And they each drew one of their own, of their school and their school community, and who they really had to be aware of. Certainly it's the students, they're always there, you know, but who else? What about the family? What about the school board or the school council? Is there community pressure? and you'll know in your own mind exactly who is part of the circle of influence. And it can be such a powerful influence and a positive influence, but it can also be something that you have to be very conscious of and sometimes a bit wary of too. And thinking about that and knowing that does impact on the way things play out. And what you can see there, when each had finished putting up their ideas, we put them around the room, and an expression that's often used with things like this is a gallery walk. Just like you're in a gallery walking around, well, they're not Picassos and all the wonderful artists that you know, but hey, they're thoughtful ideas that are ideas worth sharing. And the principals went around and had a look at each other's, and then we sat around and had a discussion about them. And sometimes they added post-its on it with another thought or another idea as well. And then we all sat together sharing the ideas and hearing a little bit more about how it impacted on their school, the different circles of influence. We also visited the schools. I thought it was very important for David and Daniel and Flossie to see Australian schools. It's wonderful being able to meet together with a group and getting to know each principal, not just by their name tag, but knowing who they are, knowing their name without looking it up. And hearing about their school is very different to seeing the school, going there. You can hear so many things, but when you actually walk around the school, you can feel it. You can feel, yeah, I can see that there's a lot of collaboration happening here. Look at how the children help each other or talk to each other, and how the teachers gather, and how the documentation around the walls is about things that are happening now, not all finished perfect illustrations. That's lovely too, but what about the process? How can parents understand what's happening too? And so many different things. And people that came up to us as we were walking around or sat for coffee with us at break time and talked about what they were doing and hearing conversations. And I remember one day in my office back at ISV Independent Schools Victoria, I had a phone call and I picked it up, and it was a student. Now, a lot of teachers call me and principals of schools, but not usually students. And this was a student at one of the schools involved in this project, and this student was saying, I saw your name somewhere in one of our something at school and on a poster or something, I don't know, and can you tell me a bit more about learning that matters? And I thought, isn't it great that it's spread within the school community, the students talking about it too? and he said, you know, it's really interesting now, when we start something new, the teachers will sometimes say to us, does this matter to you? What matters about it? And we find we're using that language a lot ourselves. Does this matter? Oh, I don't think so, but what if? And yeah, I want to learn about this. It actually matters to me because it was becoming part of the school language. And this young man, he was in year 10, which is about 15 or 16, or year 11, around 16 years of age, because I asked him a little bit about himself. I was curious. It was really interesting having a student talking to me about this. But it was also such a good indication that what the principals are saying is authentic. It's not something that they're saying what we think we want to hear. And we know students can be like that too often, unfortunately. And we don't want that. We want openness. We want trust. And the principals were telling us what was happening in their school, and we didn't go to see if they were doing it. We wanted to get to know them better and get to know their contexts and their environments. But when you hear students talking about it, and when in teachers' conversations, yeah, this matters, but I don't know about that. I don't know if that really matters. You know, and it became part of their language, the shared language. And in posters like this, when there's progress happening in the school, in another room, the principal called it the war room, and it was a small meeting room where he had up headings of leading learning and learning that matters, and teachers came in and wrote comments underneath it and what they were doing in their classes, and they were constantly adding to it. So it was really good to see that it had been taken up in the school. And now that we're in the third year of the project, we're seeing that more and more. And it's just really exciting to see. And when I get a phone call saying, oh, I can't believe what happened, the pennies finally dropped, and that the principals are really open in talking about it. And even though we get together as a group only 4 times a year, and that's precious time for principals, it's not unusual for someone to drop into the office and say, I really want to talk with you about something. Or another saying, can you come out to my school? I want to show you something. Or I can't get into the office, I can't make the time, but if you can come out here, and of course I do whenever I can. The openness to sharing, and that's something that Dave, Daniel, Flossie and I have seen in the group from very early on, that there is an openness and trust in the group. And that's what you've been talking about, and some of you in your dreams and in talking out and responding to those questions and your thoughts were talking about that trust, that being able to talk about it. Like at the end of last year, one of our school principals said, I'm worried about the numbers in my school, enrolments are dropping. It's a pretty brave thing to say when you're with principals of really successful schools. They're all successful in their own way, but sometimes the way they're measured by success by outside markers, the number of students or size of school, the sorts of resources, of course the results. But there are so many other things that are much more important than numbers when we're talking about student development and student progress. And other principals start saying to him, do you know, I had the same problem 3 years ago. These are some of the things that I did. And at break times, a few clustered around him and were talking more and sharing their ideas. And that's happening more and more, and really from very early days. And it's something that really gives us so much joy to see, that they feel comfortable enough with each other, that they can talk about different challenges they might have had with staff, different things that have been happening, and as well as the excitements and the beautiful things. The mosaic at the bottom there on the left is from a school that did a very large community activity for students in the senior years of the school, where all students before they left school, so in their senior years, made a tile with something about them to make a communal mosaic for the school. Very, very beautiful. Very beautiful. And it's really very exciting when you can see that the teachers worked together with the concept, met with the art teachers about the structures and the processes, the plans to do it, and the students really gathered in and were doing it and in art lessons, but not all students were doing art in the final years, in lunch times before school and really working to do it. Down the bottom right you can see the war room at a very early stage. Now it's covered with things all over the wall of different things, and first it started with the principal putting up things, but then it's teachers' comments everywhere. And documentation is a very important. I'm not expecting you to read it all, but I'll tell you a little bit about the story, and this is only a very small part of it. Documentation, keeping your story, is to be able to share it with others so they can learn from it, is a very important part of it. And this was in a grade 5 class that Daniel and I went in, and the teacher was taking a maths lesson. Now, on first thought, you'd think this is a very unusual maths lesson. The kids are playing with tin cans, they're looking at maps of the world, they were really crossing disciplines in so many ways, going beyond so much would be in an ordinary a regular grade 5 maths lesson. And what they were doing with the cans was that they were weighing them. They were measuring how much does a can weigh, because they wanted to actually find a way to support people in a country where there wasn't enough fresh water, and children were dying every day because they didn't have enough to drink, they won't be able to keep really clean and hygienic situations, and it was really tough. And they'd like to help out, and together we make a difference is the theme of this school. And they're doing so many different things throughout the school to make a difference. And how it matters to make this difference, what a difference it makes to these children on the other side of the world that just don't have enough water. And they'd worked out, by weighing the cans, they worked out how many cans they needed to collect to get enough money to send to build a well in a small village. And the discussions that went on, the way they researched it, the maths was a very big part of it. The quantity of the water that is needed for drinking, how much a well can hold, how many cans they need for the amount of money they need. So much maths, but all with purpose. And they were so committed to it and so involved in it. And as we were walking around and talking to the students, and this wasn't a lesson put on for show for us, this was a part of a project that was going on, and really working hard. And there's a lot more documentation of it, but I know it's hard to read documentation now from a screen, but just to give you a sense that we encourage the teachers to collect evidence of what's happening in their classroom. It's really good to be able to share the sorts of things you're doing that help you achieve your goals and things that matter. And the learning that's happening matters not just for collecting money to buy a water well. All that maths is being done will come in handy for lots of other things. And capturing stories of learning that matter, that's very much a part of the documentation. And I've got photos, and I haven't put in all the photos and all the things because I'm conscious that we can only really get a taste of the apple now. But frame sometimes in Boston Common and also in Bilbao. There's a frame that is an empty frame, and through it you see a scene. And depending on how far away from the frame you are, you see a small part or a big part. So thinking about frames and windows and frames was one of the structures we used to help principals capture something that matters that they'd like to share and like to make explicit to their students and to other teachers. So a window is looking in at something, looking into a particular experience, an event, something that's happened, an episode of learning or leadership. It could be a conversation of people in the corridors having. It could be something that's happening in a classroom. It could be a group of students really sitting together working on something, or one student taking a lot of attention. It can be so many different things. But the frame around it, what's the big idea? What's the big idea that places this window into context? We talked a lot about stories because we wanted principals to tell the stories of their schools. And it was really interesting how many stories came out because it was an atmosphere of trust. And the untold stories. How many untold stories are there? Well, we don't know, do we? The fact that they're untold is we'll never know how many untold stories there are. But I remember one principal saying after a while that when she was working on her project in school, because they're all working on action projects, and the dreams were the beginning of it. And then the mysteries, the questions, and then the steps they took, that's all part of their action projects. And part of having evidence about it, they could look back on and think, where have we gone? Where have we come from? Where are we going? This principal said she was talking to some of her principals in senior high school, and she was talking with them one-on-one, not as a group as often happens. And this teacher, she sat with the teacher in the classroom, and the teacher was telling her things she had no idea were going on. The teacher was doing a good job, and she'd ticked all the right boxes and everything, but the way she was doing things was very unknown and very interesting. And the principal thought, well, I wonder if the other teachers of this subject know about it too. Are they sharing it? How many untold stories are there in my school? And that became something that she really was on a mission to find out more and develop ways that people could communicate more with each other and share their stories. And I think that's in many places there are untold stories. And, talking about stories, I remember because I facilitated the residentials when the Harp team of wonderful people went with us, and I was talking about stories, and Daniel suggested maybe get a storyteller come in and talk about telling stories, because we all remember stories, but I couldn't get one at that time. But I did get other people at different times to come and share their stories. But I started looking up stories myself, short stories, very short ones. And there was one that I found was particularly relevant. And I'm sure it's common in many of your cities that there can be competition between schools. It can be very gentle competition, but when parents are choosing the school, if it's not regulated where they go, there can be, oh, this school has got great teachers, or this school gets wonderful marks, or this school's got great facilities, or whatever. It's talked about in the paper, or they advertise. Like, there's so many different reasons that influence people in their choice of schools. And the competition can sometimes lead to people not sharing their stories, that this is ours, this is mine, keep it to myself, and it can be a small idea, it can be a big plan, and it happens. And one of the stories I came across was about an agricultural community in Eastern Europe, probably a century ago, and that farmers were getting ready for a show, an agricultural fair, and one farmer often won. He had great crops. He was really a good farmer and had the right seeds, and his crops grew beautifully. And then he said, but just a month or so before the fair started, someone came to him, a nearby farmer, and said, "Can I have some of your seeds, please?" And what do you think the natural reaction might be? Probably not, you'd think, Who's going to give away the winning one? What were you thinking? And I know there's lots of things to talk about, how people react when you've got a great idea, and sometimes you want to share it, sometimes you want to develop it further yourself, and they're all reasonable ways, but that it's part of life. There's competition. That's how some industries do better than others. But if you share it, and the farmer said to him, much to the farmer who's asking the question, got such a big surprise, he said, "Sure, I'll give it to you." And he said, "But aren't you afraid that I'll win the competition?" He said, and the farmer said, "What the wind takes away, the wind blows back to you." It's a rather beautiful story, isn't it? And especially in education, we're all working for the same goal. We all want our students to be the best they can be, to have the skills they need and positive, strong people going into the future. But if we keep good ideas to ourselves and don't share them, or someone doesn't share them with our child, what does that mean? And it was a really interesting idea, and the principals remembered that story and came back and talked about it with different things that were happening. And it was just a casual story I found by chance. You just never know. You never know. The project is also, and I know it's nearly time to finish, and I'll just quickly go through the last little bit. These pictures are taken on a study tour. We've had 2 international study tours in the first and third year of the project. The principals have contributed to the project, but there's also been funding as well that we've had from the government, but there's certainly been contributions. And like I said before, we didn't go to schools. Here we're at IDEO, a design company in San Francisco, where they make amazing ideas and do things very differently. We went to a military base in America. Now, the principals were a bit wary about some of the decisions I'd made, and I know I make crazy connections, but I did have reasons for it. But they said the military base was the place where they learnt the most. When they heard about succession planning in a military situation, when they heard about so many different things that really fitted well, how being flexible is so important in military situations, how having partners, not always being on your own, having allies, so many different things. And from APQC, the man with the grey, not much hair in the middle at the top, he's from a quality control organisation in Houston. And he's now working with schools, but originally it was all big business, looking at quality control, productivity and quality control. And so many different ideas. And in the bottom right-hand corner is a boy I taught in when he was 5 years old in school, a long time ago, and he still calls me Teacher Karen. I don't see him, but Teacher Karen. And we did a lot of thinking skills in those days. And that was when I first started working with thinking, and I didn't know about visible thinking, a lot of the artful thinking and habits of mind and building learning power, but I had picked up a 6 Thinking Hats book and learned about those, and started with very simple things with young children, like I think I may have used examples the other day, so I won't go into it for people who again, but the way they develop their thinking. But this young man now is in Silicon Valley. He's developed an a business called Kaggle, which is a problem-solving thing, that people send in a problem-solving competition. People send in their problem. Could be Boeing, it could be the health service, it could be also, and scientists, business people, or whatever, send in their solutions and ideas. And the world is helping solve world problems. And he's just doing, and this is a little boy who I knew, and he's developed his ideas. And it's so exciting that the students you're teaching are the future leaders, changing the world. All of you, people that you come in contact, are changing the world from what they learn from you. Bill Gates wanted to meet him. He was asked to the White House. I remember him as Anthony, who loved roller skating and skateboarding and windsurfing and all those sorts of things. And now, and he's not doing it for money. He's not making a lot of money. Maybe that's just because he hasn't got a business head to do that, but he's helping a lot of people all around the world developing his ideas. And what we're doing in our schools is helping people make a difference. It really is. And if we can help, we can show that we have belief in them, hope in them, and are there to help them along the way. You're the ones that can do it. We are. We're shaping the future. We finished the study tour. I've only touched on it, and we've been to so many different places. We've been to Legoland, we've been to a hospital that's connected with a gallery using art as a way to help the patients feel more cheerful in the environment, and where the principals all put on onesies or grocers or something, all in white, as they were cut paintbrushes and helping painting murals in the corridors in the hospital, but the board of the hospital did too. And the different things that learning that matters. If people were coming to the hospital saying it's so depressing in here, everywhere's blank walls, it's so sterile and cold, but art is making them feel happy and positive. That's a different sort of learning that matters. And a surgeon leading this, a leader, she's not just concentrating on the physical health, but the mental and emotional health. And we've learned a lot here about the connection between cognitive and emotional. And the bottom right picture and the diagonal pictures, top left, bottom right, are at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. We finished the study tour there. Both study tours have finished meeting with the Harvard team, and the first one at Harvard itself, sitting in the faculty room and really talking and listening to beautiful people that David and Daniel and Flossie introduced to the group. And there's our group of school leaders from Australia who through ISV have had this wonderful opportunity. it's a lot of reading to finish off with this sort of quote, but I thought it was, yep, we can do it. You can do it. When you've got ideas, believe in them. Follow through. Stop there. Thank you.